Hi everyone. Thank you so much for making it here on a truly miserable day. But hopefully this will make it considerably less miserable. Um, I'm really delighted to be here. My name is Alice Butler. I'm co-director of an organization called aemi. That's aemi. And we are an organization that supports and regularly exhibits programs of moving image work by artists and experimental filmmakers. And we're thrilled to be partnering with Dublin International Film Festival for the first time for this event about artist film and the festival circuit, a conversation with Anastasia Lukovnikova. I've been rehearsing the surname. Anastasia is a film researcher and film programmer, currently working at IndieLisboa, which is a fantastic festival, a festival that makes a lot of space for meaningful engagement with artist film and experimental film. So we're really thrilled that you're here, and thank you so much for making the time to have this conversation with me, and there'll be time as well at the end for questions from all of you. So it's brilliant that you're here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alice. And thank you everyone who is here on this day, on Sunday at 11 a.m.
Yeah.
This is really
early.
A passion, a dedication, a commitment.
Yeah, and I suppose I just wanted to sort of start off by saying that we are at aemi really thrilled to be partnering with DIFF for the first time for this event, because part of what we do at aemi is we meet with film artists and experimental filmmakers on a regular basis. We offer artist support sessions. These are like hour-long conversations with filmmakers about any aspect of their practice that they're looking for feedback on, or just a conversation about. And I would say, without a doubt, the most frequent topic of conversation is how to get their work circulating on the film festival, with film festivals, and how does it work, which are the festivals that they should be submitting to, all of the kind of related questions. So I was thrilled that Grania from DIFF suggested this conversation with you, Anastasia. I think especially because platforms like Film Freeway are really useful and necessary, but they can also make the job of circulating your film feel intimidating and overwhelming, and potentially a little bit alienating and expensive. So we're here to try and demystify what the film programmer does, and what the kind of process is for selecting films for a festival, and what the strengths are of showing your work with festivals and other exhibition opportunities as well. So I'll just I'll talk a little bit about Anastasia's background, and then we'll actually have a conversation. So Anastasia Lukovnikova is a programmer and a film researcher based in Lisbon. Initially trained in political science at the National Research University Higher School of Economics in Moscow, Anastasia later enrolled in the directing program at the High Courses for Scriptwriters and Film Directors, one of Russia's oldest film schools. Between 2012 and 2017, she worked in the production of independent cinema in Russia and Brazil, gaining experience across all areas of production, from project development and financing to being first AD. And between 2017 and 2018, Anastasia focused on first-person cinema research as part of her master's studies at the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities at Nova University, Lisbon. Since 2019, Anastasia has been part of the team at IndieLisboa International Film Festival, where she coordinated programming until the 2024 edition. She currently continues as a programmer for the International Feature Film Competition, having contributed to the selection of multiple festival sections over the years. And since 2024, Anastasia has been pursuing her PhD research with the focus on collaborative practices in film programming, which is so interesting, She was a fellow at the 2021 edition and a participant in the 23 and 24 editions of Doc's Kingdom International Seminar on Documentary Cinema in Portugal, as well as an online participant in the Flaherty Film Seminar in 2022. And she is a part of the, this is not going to be pronounced correctly, Laboratorio de Cave collective dedicated to the practice and study of 16mm and 8mm film. So I wanted to say all that to give you a sense of the background of film programmers, because sometimes when you're submitting films, you aren't necessarily aware of how a film programmer comes to be a film programmer. And Anastasia, your background is so interesting and richly engaged with film culture. And so I thought we would start with like a really basic question and build from there. And I wondered if you could just talk about, into your mind, like how do you describe what a film programmer does, and specifically the kind of work you do as a programmer for IndieLisboa.
Oh, thank you again. And apologies, this bio was really long. I mean, intimidating. I will cut it shorter next time. Well, what does a film programmer does? I mean, builds a program for a film festival. There is a bunch of ways we do this, and every festival is different. But maybe before we get to this point, which is very important, maybe we can take a step back to think about the relationship between the experimental film and film festivals, because definitely I think this is to have a bigger context. Because, for example, also each festival is different. The way we approach it, we don't really distinguish. We consider all sorts of films for our international competition, for shorts and features. We watch experimental, animation, documentary, fiction, things that define themselves as hybrid, things that films that deny any definition. So within our practice, we don't have a separate space, as some festivals do, dedicated to experimental film. For us, it's more incorporated into the whole picture. But what sometimes happens, and I'm very happy that it happens, because I think also sometimes you need to have a more specific focus and to place experimental film within the context of its history or the current moment, the current ways of making it or distributing it. Sometimes we make special focuses. Special programs dedicated to a certain filmmaker or a certain distributor or a certain movement. So it also happens. So I probably come back to this later. So when I think about experimental, for me, so it's not a specific, I do not do a specific research within my programming practice with IndieLisboa for searching for experimental film work or artist films. So actually, we can also approach the definition, what we understand. But basically, maybe...
I mean, if you maybe talk a little bit about IndieLisboa, I think it's so interesting that you say that, because when we at aemi are talking to artists and they're asking about film festivals that are that accommodate artist experimental film, there are these kind of two possibilities: a festival that is entirely devoted to making space for artist experimental film. I'm thinking of Berwick Film and Film and Media Arts Festival in the UK, and I should use the opportunity to promote the festival that aemi started last year and that took place here at the complex, called Dissolutions. So there are instances of festivals that exclusively show artist and experimental film, And then there's festivals like IndieLisboa that, as you describe, don't sort of try and create labels, that they are absolutely making space for artist experimental film, but it's part of a landscape of film that also includes narrative and more commercial film. But maybe if you could describe IndieLisboa, how many people are on the team, and how you divide up shorts programming and feature filmmaking, for example.
Definitely. So we are about 20 programmers. It's really a big team, and we have a bunch of sections. As I mentioned, international competition for features and shorts. They don't compete against each other. It's a separate competitions. Then we have thematic sections like music section, music documentary, let's say, genre, history of film or restored works, children and youth. That's about it. And each section, each strand usually has its own committee, selection committee, and usually it is, especially those sections where you watch submissions, because we accept submissions for international competition. We are really a bunch of people because we receive so many films. We really need.
Do you have an idea of how many films you receive?
I would say in total it would be like several thousands, between 4 and 5 per year, including shorts and features. And then how many films we program, it would be between 275 and 300, okay, including shorts and features.
So that's a really helpful statistic to think about. 4,000 or 5,000 films, and only 200 or 300 being selected. So you're a stiff competition.
Yeah, that's really a lot.
Yeah.
And
say, maybe if you could describe the process of what happens if we just focus on submission, what happens, say, when it's first submitted, who sees it, and what kind of channel of programmers does it go through, if at all, if it's going to be selected. So, if you watch a film that's been submitted and you like it, I know you're describing kind of working in a committee. Mm-hmm. What is the process like then? You pass it on, and how many other of your colleagues will watch it, and how does that work?
Well, it depends a little bit on the committee, but basically, yes. Definitely, it is impossible for each programmer to watch all the films. So definitely, I watch a film. It is assigned to me. I watch a film, a submission, and if I like it, I pass it on to somebody else, for example, for second opinion, if I'm not that sure, or if I love the film absolutely, I pass it directly to the committee. And then everyone in the committee watches the film, and then we meet. Sometimes it's very nice. We also try to watch films together on a big screen, which is very, very, very important. We cannot make it happen for every film, but we really try.
For a short list.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really helpful. It's a different kind of experience when you can watch a film together and discuss. And then I believe we were talking about it earlier. I think it's very interesting. I mean, not every festival works like this, but I know a bunch of festivals that have discussions, that have screenings together and do this. Sometimes it's difficult to explain to a filmmaker or to a producer who submitted a film that I say, well, I love your work. But we didn't select it. And people are like, what? How is it possible? And I try to explain, this is really like, we are a bunch of people, and I think it's very important that we are a bunch of people, different people with different backgrounds, with different experiences, with different education, with different, not everyone is actually from film background, which is also very important, I believe, and we make the decision together, and the decision is based on what we are in a certain place, in a certain context, and also there are other factors, I would say, such as the market, its distribution, premiere status, the relationship with the filmmaker, I hope I pronounced this right, the relationship.
The existing relationship with the filmmaker,
yes.
yeah.
Because, for example, if we screened previous work by the filmmaker, we will be more attentive for all the future works.
And I'm so sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just that would you say that for features, you are more kind of, more inclined to pay close attention to a feature if you have screened a short film by that filmmaker before, or you're familiar with that filmmaker's work through their short work, even with other festivals? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
We always follow, and it's very good that you ask this. We always keep an attention. We always watch. Okay, if this filmmaker was screened the 2 shorts and now they are preparing a feature, we will want to watch it. We will reach out and we will ask for it. So definitely, this is a step. Like developing the relationship with a festival that you think is a good place for your work. Developing this relationship throughout the years is very important. And we have a bunch of those. And sometimes we even do like a special focus. So when a filmmaker that launches the first feature, we can screen all the previous shorts and then the feature. We can do like a focus. We did it, for example, with Carolina Poggi and Jonathan Vinel, with Camilo Restrepo in the recent years. This is like, sometimes we have this dedication. Okay, let's show how the career develops.
Yeah.
But like career in its early, because it's still the first feature is considered the beginning of a career. But actually, there is so much work behind before this that we want to show.
Yeah, I think that's so useful, because I think sometimes there's this real, an admirable kind of sense of ambition for filmmakers to want to make a feature, but the reality is that it's extremely difficult for a programmer to argue for its inclusion in a festival where there's no existing relationship, unless it's doing something really extraordinary. And that's not, I'm sure that is the case a lot of the time, but I guess I'm just trying to make the point that building up a profile, building up a relationship with the festival through short filmmaking is very valuable, is not invaluable. Like it's a really useful way of building your practice and process of getting your work seen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit, because you've already alluded to it, but obviously you get thousands of submissions, and then a certain amount of your program must be by invitation. Could you talk a little bit about when, what are the distinctions? Like, I suppose it's with filmmakers you've worked with before, or what are the other kind of films that you would be seeking out rather than going through the submission process?
Yeah, this is a good follow-up to the question, what does a programmer do? I mean, of course, there are submissions in our case and in many festivals' case, but then there is scouting. So definitely film programmers, they travel to other festivals, they watch films there, they talk to filmmakers. There is a very important factor such as sales agents. And so there is a number of like this professionals that communicate, that build a bridge between filmmakers and producers and film festivals. And definitely they keep in touch. It's a relationship that's ongoing.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we are always in conversation. They reach out to us saying, look, this year, we know you, this year you would love this film from our catalog. And of course, we will be listening because they know what we show. Then, of course, we don't require, as I mentioned, our festivals, we don't require in world premiere. So we take films that premiered at other festivals. So of course we look at the track record, like what do the critics say? What are the awards? So definitely this is also a factor.
Would you describe, is IndieLisboa, like, there are different kinds of festivals that are like audience led festivals and like industry festivals. So an audience festival is like, in my mind, you can fully correct me if I'm wrong, which is a huge possibility, but if like you're thinking all the time for engaging like people who live in the city or in the city, as opposed to an industry festival, which is like doing what you're describing with sort of premieres and trying to like, speak to other programmers, other festivals. Is IndieLisboa somewhere in the middle, or?
Yeah, it's somewhere in the middle because definitely the city is engaging, definitely a lot of like a local film crowd, like Portuguese film crowd is engaging, because also we have a really strong national competition, which I didn't mention. We really showcase what's happening in Portugal. And we have a lot of premieres, so it's like a big interest from Portuguese film community. But definitely this also attracts international crowds, because we have industry event where we showcase Portuguese films in work in progress. We have different panels. So we try to build this communication between the Portuguese film industry and the outside. But also, I like to think about IndieLisboa as a like filmmakers festival, because a lot of young filmmakers that are making shorts at the moment, or who already have like first, second, third feature. So it's not a red carpet festival in this sense. It's like really a young crowd, very passionate about what they do, and because there is. I don't know, because everybody wants to be in Lisbon, so it's like we have great parties. So it's a lot of networking, which is not very business-like. So people make friendships, and then they collaborate, and then they fall in love. I don't know, a lot of things are happening in this sense. So I feel like this is also why people love the festival.
Yeah. That is, I think, a really interesting area about like the strengths of the festival, the film festival as like an exhibition site. And we might come back to that, because I think I derailed your thought process around the artist film, experimental film distributor and sales agent. We were talking before about like, so I guess the organizations that you're referring to are like Lux in the UK, or Arsenal in Germany, Six Pack Film in
Austria.
Yeah,
I prepared the list, but I was not thinking now about. I was speaking about more a bit in general.
Okay.
But definitely, when we think about, even if we talk about experimental film, definitely there are sales agents, there are distributors in Europe that make this connection for us, that we talk to, and that come every year, and that bring new talent. And those are very important. So yes, I have a tiny list here. Not so tiny, but it's definitely not a full list. It's Lightcone in France. Actually, a few years ago, we did a special focus on Lightcone because they had a 40th year anniversary, and it was such a treat. We just dived into their catalog and found like the craziest works that we as programmers want to see, to watch on 16 millimeters or 8 millimeters. And it was really a pleasure, when a film programmer, sometimes you program films because you want to watch them on the big screen, and you want to share them with other people, and it was really brilliant. They definitely make a great great work in distribution of experimental film. By the way, I remembered now. Last year we screened. I was checking because I feel like we don't really screen a lot of Irish films, and
we're hoping that'll change.
yes, this is why
this is what we're here to do.
It's really good to be here and to establish this connection. But last year we screened a Portuguese artist who is Irish based, Elena.
Oh, Elena!
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. You can also share your experience of the festival.
This is how Ireland works.
Definitely.
Say a name and the person.
And I think you are represented by Lightcone, right? Yes. And they had the 16mm screening in the national competition, and I thought, how do we put this? This is not the room where we usually do this. How do we do this? Where do we place the film in the program? It's like really the whole bunch of questions you have, but when you these days, when everything is digital, when you have this dedication of, okay, this is the work that should be screened in the 16.
Was this the only film that was screened?
Not the only, because it happens, we do this a lot in Cinemateca Portuguesa. So usually whenever we have...
Yes. Like we didn't know until the kind of last moment if it was going to be possible or not.
Yes.
There was a lot, but they were really accommodating. Like we didn't need them to do it fully and we go. Because I was also surprised that it was kind of funny that it was in the national competition, although it's a film that was also made in Portugal, but it's like Ireland. Yes. And it was in the program. Like narrative, shorts, and I really enjoyed that because that's why I'm there, I guess. Like, when you're screening mostly in the experimental film context, programs are rarely based, and you're saying that.
Yes, exactly. No, it's great that you bring it up, and it's great that you loved it. Because actually, in the last 2 years, I think it's going to be our second decision when we stopped putting the category of the genre on the website, on the catalog. So now, sometimes from the synopsis of the film, you can understand that it's a documentary, maybe, or it's more of a fictional, or more of a genre, or maybe more experimental. But it's not like specifically designated on the website. And I know I think it's something that's happening now. It's like a new line of thought. I know that Rotterdam has been doing it for a while. I don't know if Biennale as well. I'm not sure now. But there are a bunch of festivals that now makes this step. But I know that not everyone agrees. Not all filmmakers agree. Not all people from the audience agree, and not. So it's a tryout. Let's say, I don't know. We are trying to understand how it's going to work. But so far nobody complained. But I feel like there is this. No, but I need to know. And we are like, well, you can figure it out by yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, for sure. Because I'm thinking of, say, Cork International Film Festival here, which has a long history of showing artist and experimental film. And they have a program called Free Radicals, but the festival has extended that now to include more artist film, experimental film. We show a couple of programs there, and they call it Parallax. And the idea then is that people know, if you want to see artist and experimental film, you go to the Parallax section of the festival. It's like the designated area. And then, as you say, in IndieLisboa, the approach is, why do we need to kind of differentiate? Can't we just appreciate different kinds of filmmaking? I just wanted to come back as well to the artist film distributor thing, because we were talking before this event, and Ireland doesn't currently have a distributor that's entirely devoted to artist film and experimental film. aemi does various kind of activities that are sort of moving towards that space, but it's in no way explicitly doing that job. Having said that, that's not to say that Irish film isn't in distribution. Like you say, Helena's work is with Lightcone, and so are several other Irish filmmakers. Vivian Dick is here. I hope she doesn't mind me drawing attention to the fact that her work is in distribution with Lux. So these distributors are based in, they have, like, say, Six Pack. They in Vienna, they will have a portion of their collection that's fully, devoted to sort of building up an Austrian collection of work, but they will also have a significant collection of international titles. So while Ireland doesn't have a distributor rooted here, there are still opportunities for filmmakers here to be in distribution. Just wanted to highlight that because
this is very important.
Yeah.
And I was remembering today in our conversation also that we do get a lot of films that I would say more experimental from several schools in Europe, with which we are in conversation. And if that would be Had in Switzerland, that would be Frénoir in France, that would be Elias Kereheta in San Sebastian. For example, like the three that come up to the mind when you think about more experimental form and more. So definitely, this is also a way that we scout new talent in this area.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about like the numbers. I was curious to understand, because while we don't put the genre tags on the website or the catalog, we still have to have it for European finance. We have to be accountable on these things. And so I did statistics for, I checked the last year, and it was, for example, 12 features in the international competition, and 4 of them had the tag experimental. So that could be experimental documentary, or it could be documentary doc fic X.
That's a really significant portion.
So it's 1/3.
Yeah.
And the same for international competition shorts. It was 34 films, and it was 10 that were marked as experimental. So I didn't check the national competition, but definitely we have at least Helena to represent.
Can I ask you about what advice you would give to artist filmmakers, experimental filmmakers who are trying to increase the chances of their films getting selected? You mentioned something to me over a Zoom call a while ago about when people should submit. Basically, just the earlier the better. If you could talk a little bit about why it makes a huge difference to submit as soon as a festival has opened a call for new films.
Yeah, I guess because we receive so many films, the earlier your work comes in, the fresher our eyes will be, and the more slots are still available, so the competition is lower. But I would say, I mean, if you can, this is why I keep bringing it up, and I'm sorry, there is no such body in Ireland. I hope this is the way to go. But if you can get a distributor, or if you can get a sales agent on board, it would be much better, somebody to represent you and to do this work for you, a person who can, a professional who can help you build the festival strategy, who can help you, who will pay the submission fees, for example, which is also a big
Expense.
Yeah. It's a cost.
Yeah.
A distribution cost. A person who will be there, like, doing this job of selling your film while you can engage in artistic production, which is much better. But of course, I understand that it's not possible. It's a limited number of agencies. But let me get back to this list. By no means it is a full list, but yes, Lightcone, Six Pack in Austria, Lux in UK, iFilm in Netherlands, Arsenal in Germany, And I have video data bank in US. I'm by no means, I don't really know. I speak more about my experience of working in Europe and let's say in continental Europe, which is a bit different from UK and Ireland.
Yeah.
I
mean, what I would say about that is that aemi has just joined a group called Dynamo, which is DINAMO. Is that how you spell Dynamo? And essentially that's a network of artists, an international network of artist film distributors, because we are like, I guess, working in the space of artist and experimental film here and advocating for the recognition of the practice here, which I believe is so strong. But Dynamo has a website, and that has a hyperlink and a really comprehensive list of artist and experimental film distributors all over the world.
Oh, this is perfect.
Yeah,
I want to see that.
it's really good. Like it's just even if you go on the homepage and you see that list, and if nothing else, if you can familiarize yourselves with what these artist film distributors do, how they're distinct from each other, and what kind of work they seem to engage with, that's going to be hugely helpful, I think, for your practice. Yeah, for sure.
I was gonna build on that as well, saying if you are a filmmaker or an artist who has to do self-distribution, it's very helpful to, like, you don't need to submit to all the festivals in the world. You really need to find those festivals that will that have the audience or the program in line, or that could engage with your work. And sometimes you can figure it out by like talking to other people and other filmmakers, or even try to find a reference film, like something that kind of represents your work in a way, and just see where this work was screened, and then start from there, for example. So definitely it's not going on Film Freeway and just like, okay, I'm just gonna submit until somebody takes my work. It's not gonna work out.
I cannot emphasize how important that is. I feel the exact same way, and sometimes you'll see films with 100 laurels, but you know, sometimes that can just be sending a link over to, you know, a festival, and you don't know anything about how they screen the work. Is it presented properly? Do they ever invite filmmakers to talk about what they do? Is it a meaningful presentation of the work? Because if it's not, in some cases it's as good as not showing it, is my view. I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but I think as much as possible, especially as you're starting out, if your film is selected, go to the festival. Hopefully they can help cover some costs, but if they can't, you can apply to Culture Ireland to try and support your visit. Try as little as possible to just send it out and hope it's, you know, landing. You know, the life of the film can only really be meaningful if you can sort of feed off how it lands with an audience. And you know, like IndieLisboa does, like you have Q&As and panels and a community of people who count on the program, and filmmakers who go are inspired by what they see. That's a culture generating festival.
Oh, thank you.
You know, whereas there are other festivals that you kind of don't know what they're doing. Like, are they just taking your money and screen it? You know, so it's just really important to properly engage with the festivals that you're submitting to before you submit. I also just wanted to ask, you alluded to like the strengths of showing with festivals, and I thought you created such an amazing picture there of like the social aspect and a networking scene that isn't business-like, that it's like just sharing influences and ideas. And so yeah, I wondered if you wanted to say more about that, the strength of like showing your work in a festival. And then also where there are weaknesses and other ways that people can think about showing their work if they don't feel that's right for them or for a particular film. Maybe that's difficult. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, how can I approach this? I mean, we have been talking about this. I mean, sometimes, I think the first question you should ask is, why would you want to show a work at the film festival? Because if it is an experimental work, it has other ways of being in a space. Maybe it doesn't have to be on the big screen. Maybe it can be a gallery, maybe it can be something mixed, maybe it can be performance, I don't know. So definitely, if you are aiming for a big screen at the film festival, it should be for a reason. And there can be multiple number of reasons. But definitely, if your work doesn't, how do I say this? If you feel, well, I don't know.
Well, I guess it was more when we were chatting before, and in your PhD, you were talking about like collective film programming, which I know festival programming is to an extent, but like there's a group here called FanVid that I know some of you are really familiar with, but that's a group of people who they have a rolling open, it's actually probably not a rolling open call, but it's they would screen almost everything that people submit. So if you want to have the experience of screening your work for an audience as opposed to a gallery, that's like a DIY setup. It's not about like getting paid for a screening. It's about more of the development of a community around these kind of practices. And you can potentially be involved in like some of the programming around that, and that gives you insight as well. So I suppose, yeah, or like maybe you want to put on an exhibition and it'll include your work. But I guess that thing of like taking ownership yourself. Like,
the idea that, I mean, maybe you don't need a festival. Maybe you don't need a festival and you can create your own space, depending on in fact, the audience that you want. And for example, yes, you mentioned, I make part of the tiny little group in Lisbon of like people who are passionate about film. And what we do sometimes, we just organize screenings on film for ourselves. It can be our work, it can be our friends' work, it can be some prints that we of like film classics that like we have access for, like, I don't know. Basically, we don't have any funding, or we don't have the structure to get the funding, because I think they could have. But it takes some energy. But they just do the things that we don't have. Because there you have a Cinemateca Portuguesa where you can watch films on film, but it's a very, as a Cinemateca, it has a very, also its limits to the programming, and sometimes we want to see something different, and we make it happen for ourselves. Yeah, and also there is a film collective, a great one. They have a residency, and they have financing, and they do a lot of different stuff. They really help artists develop new work. It's called Laboratório de Torre. It's in Porto, and it's a really great place. They do screenings. They really build a community. They have a collective lab. They have equipment. They are really great. So I think also these places could be the places that we build for ourselves, or the places that already exist a little bit on the margin. Also a way to go if you want to have an audience, for example. Of course, festivals are quite important if you want to build career, I guess. You get this label of quality, you get this like, okay, this has been approved by this festival, and now you have, as you say, you have a laurel, you have like opening credits saying this has been screened at Cannes Film Festival. Well, which is probably unlikely for an experimental work.
Yes, that's not the kind of destination point typically,
Definitely.
But I think that's a really important point, that a lot of this work, it can, like, you can engage with it in any number of different kinds of contexts, and sometimes outside of a festival can be as meaningful or more, depending on the work and its own like specific needs. Yeah, and I'm just conscious that it's we're in the middle of a festival and the people might be trying to get to lots of other things, but a huge thank you to you, Anastasia, and to everyone at DIFF and the team at Complex as well. Thank you all for being here.